that spooky month is upon us, it's time to talk about monsters and other supernatural creatures. Today, I am talking about The Shape of Water, a fish out of water romance and a complete spin on the monster genre. I avoided watching the film at first because I thought the concept of a woman falling in love with a fish man was a little weird. And then I realized that that was the whole point of the movie. Del Toro was trying to make the audience feel uncomfortable. He showed us a character on film that was different enough to feel foreign to us, but human enough for us to relate to. In the film, the creature is dehumanized over and over again by the villain in the movie. This happens in our world every day when someone looks different, sounds different, or even holds an opposing view. The result is they are often socially exiled. I've been baffled by how much I've been seeing it on my own Facebook feed. People are fighting and deleting each other over everything from not agreeing with someone's political opinions to something as personal as a dietary choice. Del Toro is telling us to free ourselves of our echo chambers and to be more tolerating of people who are different from us. In a world where we're more divided than ever, this film is a fairy tale for troubled times. And like all fairy tales before it, there are valuable lessons to be learned. For those who haven't seen The Shape of Water, the film takes place in 1962 Baltimore during the peak of the Cold War. The film's main protagonist is a young woman named Eliza Esposito, who works as a custodian at a top-secret government facility. Her last name means placed outside or exposed in Italian, and was often given as a surname to orphans. Eliza is a unique and rare character to be represented in film, as she is a mute and does not speak. The plot of the film takes off when the American military find a water creature they believe can be used as a weapon against the Soviet Union. To them, the creature is nothing more than a monster, and so they torture and experiment on him. They want to see if they can exploit him for American gain. When Eliza finds him, she finds him beautiful and interesting. She feeds him and teaches him sign language as a way to communicate with her. Throughout the film, Del Toro makes it clear that the line between human and creature are blurred. As a result, the two fall in love, and Eliza's mission is to set him free.
The world has suffered and is still suffering from humanity's ignorance and bigotry, and it is evident in the racism, homophobia, and general intolerance we are dealing with on an everyday basis. In Del Toro's own words,
I was choking on it. I couldn't stand this world every day without making this movie, because we are told time and again, we wake up to divisiveness and fear and pointing at the other as something you gotta fear. The lack of empathy, the lack of compassion. We're living in a tantrum era. The entire world has never been so close by social media and has never been so far apart. We are so afraid of our emotions right now. We are so afraid of not being cynical and appearing vulnerable. And I'm choking on it. I really say the ideology that they use to control us, which they do. The ideology is very simple, and we fucking buy it every time. It's us and them. That's an illusion.
Yuval Harari's novel *Sapiens* is one of my favorite nonfiction books to have been published in the last decade. In his book, he talks about human evolution and the history of mankind. Harari claims that our concepts of what is natural and unnatural are not taken from biology, but instead are invented by religious ideology. He argues that divisions between different groups of people are merely myths and falsehoods created by humans. Throughout history, people would label those who were foreign or different from them as incompetent or lesser due to fear of change and loss of power. As a result, false narratives would spread throughout society, and those myths would start to gain power and control. This is why it is important to oppose and reject ideas that are founded in fear and hatred. Those ideas are what lead to political, racial, and religious divides. that often result in horrible consequences.
The categories are usually fictional. People think they are natural, but they are fictional, they are pure invention. There is no real difference in ability between the rich and the poor, between Africans and Europeans, between Christians and Hindus and Muslims, but in our imagination, we think that there is a big difference.
The Shape of Water does an incredible job illustrating the concept of our human fear of the other. As I previously stated, people discriminate against those who are foreign or different from them. This is clearly depicted in the creature, as he has physical characteristics such as gills and scales that no one has ever witnessed on a human. As a consequence, the creature is horribly beaten by the villain of the movie, Richard Strickland, a white, powerful man who ignorantly views him as nothing more than a monster. Symbolically, the creature represents all people who are different and ostracized due to their differences. The word monster is still used to dehumanize, belittle, and ridicule individuals in our society. A great example of this is President Donald Trump's recent insulting remarks of calling United States Senator Kamala Harris a monster after a vice presidential debate with Mike Pence.
Monster that was on stage with Mike Pence, who destroyed her last night, by the way.
Del Torro was very clever in how he cast and wrote the backstories for all of his characters. The character of Strickland is a symbol for the search for the American dream and the obsession with the American nuclear family. Del Torro flipped the 1960s trope of the strong white patriarch upside down by making Strickland the villain of the movie. This is clearly illustrated by the scene where Strickland arrives home to his wife and 2 children. His son asks if he thinks they'll see jetpacks in the future, and he responds with, "Believe it, son, this is America," showing that he believes that in America anything is possible and that they can do no wrong. Additionally, his wife fits perfectly into the role of the submissive housewife. Elegantly dressed, she cheerfully greets him at home with her hair and face made up. Her character is only there to make Strickland happy, as she makes him an omelet and invites him upstairs for sex. Everything about this scene feels like a parody of female representation in the 20th century. Here's an example of a 1960s Folgers coffee ad that perfectly illustrates this.
Harvey, want anything special for your birthday?
Just a decent cup of coffee.
You're kidding.
I'm serious. Honey, your coffee's undrinkable.
It's pretty harsh.
Well, so's your coffee. You know, the girls down at the office make better coffee on their hot plates. Well, see you later.
And he didn't even kiss me goodbye. You know, if I could just make a decent cup of coffee, I could relax. So, relax. Why don't you try Instant Folgers? Tastes good as fresh perked. Good as fresh perked? I'll surprise Harvey for his birthday tonight.
Hey, great coffee.
It's Instant Folgers. Doesn't it taste good as fresh perked?
Better.
Better than those girls make at the office?
Honey, their coffee can't hold a candle to yours.
Instant Folgers taste good as fresh perked. Try it.
The wife's characterization feels like a hollow caricature of how a woman in a patriarchal society should be acting. As a result, her character is largely contrasted by our heroine Eliza, who is not married, childless, and lives to please nobody but herself.
The film takes place in 1962, a year where this definition of the American dream was still very much alive. Shortly after, in 1963, President Kennedy was assassinated and the legend of Camelot was destroyed. What was left was social distress over racism, classism, and civil rights. You'd really think that things would be different now. It's been almost 60 years, yet the President of the United States refuses to denounce white supremacy on live television and turns our global pandemic into a joke.
Are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
Sure,
are you
I'm
prepared
to do
specifically
that,
do it?
Well,
go ahead, sir.
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace.
Then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it. Do you want to call him? What do you want to call him? Give me a name. Give me a
white
name.
Supremacists and
white supremacists and right
militia.
stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what, somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem. This is a left-wing.
FBI director
This is a left-wing problem.
White supremacist. Antifa's an idea.
Both candidates felt like children in a playground, and it felt more like a comedic skit than a serious discussion between leaders. The Shape of Water's characters empower the marginalized communities in our society and makes them our heroes. Guillermo del Toro used two color palettes in his film, gold and aquamarine, and they just so happen to be my favorite color combinations. Throughout the film, you will see many different shades of blue and amber scattered throughout different scenes. The production design used these colors to evoke different moods and to illustrate the beauty of water. The color palette is very similar to the one found in Irrational Games' BioShock series, specifically with the city Rapture. Motifs of the Shape of Water and BioShock series are also very similar, as they both have strong themes of American exceptionalism, racism, and imprisonment.
American exceptionalism is the notion that the United States is inherently different and better than other countries. America is not the only country in the world that has exceptionalism, as most countries have extremists who think they are better than everyone else. In BioShock Infinite, this is symbolized by the city of Columbia. It illustrates what could happen if healthy patriots were to turn into extreme fascists. Patriotism on its own is healthy and a great way to show support and love to your country. However, the idea that one country or race is greater than the rest of the world is not. In BioShock Infinite, the main villain of the game is Zachary Hale Comstock. He is the leader of a brutal, murderous nationalist party called the Founders that founded the city of Columbia. Columbia is a great representation of a dystopian society that is masked as a utopia. From the surface, the city is aesthetically beautiful and looks like paradise. However, it is tainted by the violent, racist, and tyrannical government that is running it. Comstock calls himself the Prophet and is a symbol of what can happen when an ideology is taken to the extreme.
As the months and years turned to memories, so did the men of Congress turn to righteousness. And through the technology of men, the dollars of Washington, the Lord worked his will upon Columbia and raised her high above the Sodom below.
During the Cold War, both the US and the Soviet Union spread horrible propaganda about their rivaling countries. Whether it was through the media, censorship, or the race to the moon, each country wanted to convince their population that they were the best and the greatest nation in the world. Del Toro flips the popular narrative of the evil Russian through his character Dmitri. He is a Soviet spy who acts as the marine biologist at the facility where the creature is kept. He is one of the heroes in the film, as he refuses to kill the creature despite being ordered to, and does everything in his power to keep the creature safe from both the Soviets and the Americans.
The creature are examples of two individuals uniting despite their differences. On a grand scale, their union can represent humanity uniting for the greater good. Examples of this in history are the Allies coming together in World War II, where countries with long opposing histories, such as England and France, came together to help put an end to the Nazi regime. An even more heartwarming and extreme example is the Germans and the English putting World War I on pause during Christmas in 1914. The Allies heard the Germans singing Silent Night and joined in the song despite participating in a bloody battle just days earlier. In this moment, despite everything they were going through, the two sides saw the humanity in one another and put their differences aside, if only for a brief moment. They sang together, exchanged gifts, and even played soccer together, Imagine walking into enemy territory and having enough faith in the goodness of humanity to trust the other side and form a truce. Even though it was just for one night, these men put aside politics, put aside war, because they realized that at the end of the day, they were all the same. The film comes to an emotional climax in the scene where Eliza is talking to her good friend Giles.
When he looks at me, the way he looks at me, he does not know what I lack or how I am incomplete. He sees me for what I am, as I am.
The creature sees Eliza's beauty exactly how she is, and her inability to speak doesn't change how he perceives her. As a result, Eliza becomes empowered through his love for her and realizes that she is valuable and worthy despite being an outcast.
At the end of the film, Eliza is revived and the scars found on her neck turn into gills. She is transformed into a water creature. The scene is melancholic, beautiful, and poetic. The ending of the film is open to interpretation, but the widely believed one is that Eliza was always a water creature but had lost her gills as a child. The creature's ability to heal her and give her life underwater emphasizes that love can conquer anything.
The first thing I found was the idea of water being love. Because love like water has no shape. And it can take the shape of whatever you pour it into. You can fall in love with somebody that is twice your age, same gender, completely opposite religion, a completely wrong political persuasion. It just happens. And it is, like water, the most powerful and malleable element in the universe.
We are living in a time where we fear and attack those who are different from us. Whether it is Republicans and Democrats fighting or Facebook brawls over differing opinions, we are constantly at war with one another and silencing each other's voices. In order to create civil discourse, we need to show those who we oppose love and compassion. Without that, all sense of communication and let alone persuasion is lost because no one truly listens when another person is screaming. If we want to come to any sort of agreement, we must allow ourselves to listen and digest the thoughts and feelings of those who are different from us. The creature in the film did that with Eliza. He didn't judge or reject her due to her lack of being able to speak, but instead chose to learn sign language to communicate with her. And Eliza did the same thing with the creature, as she did not reject him for his foreign and obscure appearance, but instead embraced him for what he was. Instead of having an us against them mentality, our aim should be to listen, learn, and educate one another. My grandfather passed down some wisdom about how he would consume the news when he was a young man in war-torn Poland. He said that he'd always buy 3 newspapers, one that was left-wing, one that was centrist, and one that was right-wing. He'd read all 3 and then come up with his own understanding of the truth on his own. And that wisdom has always stuck with me.